Hey, Jesse,
Hey, how's it going, Rod?
it's going well. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm just putting this on airplane mode so the little pop up.
I forget to do that sometimes, and I sometimes I forget to do
Do
that. And
not
I remember
disturb. That's what
what's that? Sorry,
Oh, no. Go ahead.
sorry. Where are you? Are you in your home studio?
Yeah. Yeah. Here at the spot, Mixland. Yeah,
Wow.
Tube City, as some people like to call it. The no desk room, the weird, wacky room of whatever it is that I'm trying to figure out how to do.
What's weird and wacky about it?
Uh, yeah, the no desk and the tube traps that are kind of in an array here that you can kind of see, and the strange pillows in various locations, and the current project is putting together an all NS10 modified NS10 Atmos setup. So that's been the current joy.
You're doing that in that room there in your home studio?
Yeah, it'll be here. I've been like slowly piecing it all together. I have 8 NS10 speakers that I've been like taking apart and rebuilding the crossovers, and with the help of my buddy Gerhard, who's been designing that stuff. And yeah, we'll be releasing like the guide and the kit. So if anybody else wants to modify those, they can. And basically makes them sound like unbelievably accurate and flat with really low distortion and extended top and bottom end. It's beautiful.
Right. And do you enjoy doing that, being that sort of hands-on and DIY and doing all that sort of stuff yourself?
Yeah, I mean it's primarily motivated by the cost saving benefits.
Right.
Yeah, I want to be able to achieve things sonically and do the jobs without shelling out crazy inordinate amounts of money to do these things.
Yeah. And so Atmos is clearly something which is becoming more and more in demand. How are you finding working in that format?
It's fun. Kind of like everybody, we've been figuring it out over the past 12 to 18 months, and
Mm.
yeah, it's really getting there now. I think we're all kind of learning the little tricks to make spatial sound um, a little more correct,
Right.
and yeah, it's been cool. It's
What do you
exciting.
think? What do you think is the biggest thing you've learned about working that way?
Um, it's just the translation, right? So the translation to AirPods is there's this thing where when you're working in Dolby Atmos and the binaural renderer actually has a different sound than Apple's spatial audio algorithm. So checking your mix in AirPods for a while was just this guessing game, and now we're all figuring out how to monitor through them and how to kind of manipulate it and stack certain tracks and certain auxiliaries to kind of correct some of the deficiencies in the top end. There's just this inherent like textural like phasey just hash in the top end that we're kind of learning how to get it to sound right, which finally
Right.
it's exciting.
Yeah. You never stop learning. I think that's one thing that I always learn from talking to people such as yourself. You never stop learning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what would be the fun in that?
Exactly. And you've got a big week coming up. Grammy week.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you how are
Grammy
you
week, baby. It's fun. It's fun. Over the weekend, they had the LA Grammy Board chapter, or not Grammy Board, but the LA chapter nominee like lunch event, and that was incredibly cool to hang out with a lot of colleagues and friends, mixers, mastering engineers, producers that we all work alone in our little studios by ourselves most of the time, so we don't get to see each other that often, especially after the last couple of years that we've had. So it was incredibly cool to get out of my house and see some other people and just hang out, and it was also surprising how little we talked about the trade and the craft at all. Like I found
okay?
a lot of just talking about sports and philosophy and just the human experience of being in this industry, and you know
Right.
yeah, real interactions and good people.
Nice. I mean, I know you've won a Grammy previously, but
Mhm.
have you actually been to the ceremony before? Are you going this time or?
Yeah. I have never been. I will be going and attending for the first time this following weekend in Vegas. It will be great. Yeah, the last couple of years, we had COVID in 2020, which was my first nomination for the African Giant album from Burna
Yeah.
Boy. And we had just had our first daughter And so it was like, you know, and then COVID broke out. So it didn't seem like that was in the cards to go then. And then the following year, COVID was still going on. And we were about to have our second daughter. So it's like between COVID and kids, it was never quite right. And
Right.
now, so it'll be the first time attending. I'm really excited, man. I
Yeah,
can't wait.
absolutely. And so, a couple of nominations: Album of the Year for Donda, and also for Doja Cat's Planet Her.
Yeah.
If we could start by talking about your work with Doja Cat. So, am I right in thinking that you were first brought onto that project almost to do a spec mix of the song "Woman" and just to see how that went? Is that how that sort of worked?
Yeah, it was exactly. It's incredibly fortuitous how this came about because I was watching the Grammys with my wife and we saw Doja Cat perform last year, and I thought, dude, this is the coolest thing that's happened, you know, all night. I want to work with her. And that night, it was like 2 a.m. or something. Her producer Yeti sent me a DM, and it was like, hey, you know, we have this kind of Afrobeat track where we're looking to find a mix on, and we know that you do that stuff and you mix for a lot of those artists and for Burna, and oh, we would love to try you. Do you want to do a spec? I said, yeah, let's go. And yeah, got the session, and you know, took a couple days to get it right and sent it to them. And then it was like 4 or 5 weeks with just radio silence. I didn't hear anything.
Right.
So I had assumed that it had moved on and that ship had sailed. And because I've done quite a few spec mixes, and you know, you win some, you lose some, and I've learned not to get emotionally invested because sometimes you're going up against a few other mixers who are, and in my mind, you know, there's about 50 different mixers out there who are way better than me, and I look up to them and idolize them. So anyway, I got it. Yeah, he called me one day and said, yeah, you got it, man. She loved it. We played it for her. It was
Wow.
great. And yeah, kind of went from there. And then I got 3 other songs on the project.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. And here we are. It's been a, you know, monumental album. And the song Woman just broke the top 10 and the Billboard Hot 100 as of today.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's huge. So what happens when you receive I guess all the tracks for a song like that? Like, what's your process? What's the first thing that you do, and then how do you then develop that until you get the final mix that you're happy with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, using that song as an example, which is really similar to how everything else goes, every type of song. You know, I got the email for the tracks. I forwarded it straight over to my assistant. I said, "Hey, let's try this one out." So
Right.
he gets everything prepped. His name's Noah Glassman, mix giant, and he's quickly becoming a force in the industry of his own. Awesome dude. We got it all prepped up. He kind of color codes everything, gets it organized in the way that I like. You know, I start with bass and then drums after that, and then guitars, synths, mid-range instruments, and then background vocals, and then lead vocals are all the way to the right by the mix bus, which is the final track. I get everything. I'm looking at it the way it is. I listen through the record, try to kind of gather and garner what the intent was for it. And usually before I'll start like messing with things too, I'll try to get on the phone with the producer or the artist or the entire team and find out like, what do you like about it? What are you looking for out of a mix? Are you looking for the complete transformation? Do you want me to do my thing and try to get creative, or do you want me to just polish it up and kind of give you a refined version of this?
Sure.
And in that scenario for that song, it was like hey, you know, this is how the record sounds. We like how it sounds, but you know, kind of go crazy, like give it what you think it's going to need. And so yeah, we did that.
Is that hard though I mean, is there a balancing line between thinking, right, I think this is what they're probably going to want, so I'm going to try and mix towards that, as opposed to just going, this is what I feel from this track, I'm just going to mix it as I see it, and if they like it, they like it. Like, do you have to mentally kind of walk that line?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a very fine line, and it's often just kind of massaged by just writing a little note in the first delivery that I send to them in the email or in a text. I say like, hey, here's where I would put it. Here's what I would do. I am, you know, I don't have any ego about the choices I made. So if you want me to take out some of those creative liberties I took, like I'm happy to. It's all good. There are even times where I'll send like the mix I know they want, and then I'll send like an alternate version, like here's something I would try at the end, just so they, you know, if they listen to it and they hate it right off the bat, they can just go back and listen to the other one and continue to spend time with that version as they write notes for the next pass. But yeah, I'm always battling that. That's a really interesting thing that you asked this question, because I'm trying to decide now, as I like look at the trajectory of my career and like where I'm going to want to be in 10 years and the types of jobs I want to do. I do have to ask myself, like, am I going to be the guy who hands in the mix they want, or do I want to move more into like an artisan, like a producer of the mix type of role, where I do step in and take liberties, and really, I ride that line because I want to get hired and get as many gigs as I can, which is generally not touching their mix very much. But I also want to get creative, because I come from the background of being a producer and being a musician and writing songs and crafting them, and I do have a lot to offer in that sense too. So yeah, it's every day's different, every job is different. I do.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because I've seen you talk about hearing the music emotionally when you, that's something that you try to do. What do you mean by that? Hearing the music emotionally and letting that determine how you mix?
Yeah, well, for every action, pulling up fader of reverb or adding 10 dB to the top end of a mix, there's a result, and every sound is going to hit you a certain way. I'll pick through certain presets or items in my template that I've saved, that I've been using for years, that kind of deconstruct my taste and my aesthetic and my background. And a lot of it goes back to, like, I would go out and hear my dad's band play live. From in the womb, I was in the audience.
Wow.
My mom listening to my dad's band, and then all the way up through childhood hearing it and hearing how that front of house mixer mixed that band. I mean, it was the 90s. It was country rock in the 90s. It was like really a lot of verbs, a lot of punch to the kit and to the drums, and it completely influenced what I do. So it kind of coming back to your question now, I think that every little decision is pulling from those sonic memories, or the first time I heard Zeppelin 4 or Metallica the Black Album, like all these things. It's I'm able to kind of push some of these rocky elements in and pull emotionally. But I don't know, I guess it is tough to put into words.
Yeah.
I guess maybe drama, maybe making decisions dramatically is kind of something that I'm starting to do, or starting to figure out. Okay. Classic case of me not knowing how to answer a question.
Well, I guess a lot of it's instinctual. Some stuff you just can't put into words. You just do it.
Okay. Exactly. Okay, I can't put it into words. Let's accept that answer was failed. I'm the first to admit when I've failed an opportunity. So I would just say, go listen to the Doja Cat EP that I just mixed, and listen to some of those fader throws that happen. That album is a really good example of just vulnerable, dirty. These aren't clean mixes. These aren't the pristine pop and Doja stuff. This is emotion and just rawness. And we wanted to take that so much further. So it was, not cleaning up the mix and making it punchy. It was like, no, giving more compression and more, just adding filth and adding fader throws to words that just brought out a lot of pain. And those are some moves. That's how I should answer that. There we go. The Doja Cat EP with Lagoon, and It's Random.
I love the passion with which you just described that.
I know there are a lot of hand motions and gestures in there.
So you mentioned your background. So you were born into a very musical family. Is that right? Your father was a musician. I believe your mother was also a musician. Is that correct?
Yeah. She was a singer-songwriter in like the country and Christian realms, and she would travel back and forth to Nashville, and that was kind of that was ultimately a move she was going to be making. And my dad was traveling and playing in country bands and jazz groups, and then kind of got into Pro Tools and producing towards the latter end of the 90s, which is my favorite decade ever musically, by the way. And
why so?
What's that?
Why so? How come? Why in the 90s?
Oh, I think it was just formative, man. I was, I was really young, and I just came up hearing all that stuff. Yeah, those songs, it's just like every genre from the 90s. It's just like, it hits me in the feels. It's nostalgia. And also, I think it was like the peak, is the pinnacle of analog recording technology. And
right.
They reached this beautiful level of cleanliness in the recordings, but also, we were still on tape. We're still, recording the old way. So it was just clean warmth, and there was a real focus on songwriting and integrity coming out of like the cheese and the glam of the 80s, which I also heavily adore for different reasons.
Right. Sure.
But,
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
yeah.
Favorite 90s record.
Favorite 90s record. Lately I've been like digging into the Third Eye Blind album that like Airplane did, and that's been fun to revisit. But I would say like probably Alice in Chains' Jar of Flies is,
Wow.
you know, these guys went in and they had no songs written, no ideas, but they went in. I believe they went into One on One in LA, which is now 17 Hertz. It's the Metallica Black Album Room, which would be like my other favorite 90s album.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had nothing, and they just wrote these all acoustic masterpieces, just super stripped down stuff, and it's great.
So good. So you're witnessing your parents play music. Is that then implanting on your DNA? Is it natural for then you to pick up an instrument and start playing as well? Because I believe that's where you started, actually playing in bands.
Yeah, exactly. We had pretty much every instrument in the house. Well, all the main ones, right? So piano, keyboards, violin, drums, guitar, various guitars, bass. And yeah, then we had the Pro Tools setup, which I wasn't allowed to touch until like closer to high school, unfortunately. But I had I started on a little like dual stereo like tape deck thing. So I would record onto one, you know, and start with drums and just record a thing and try to imagine in my mind where I'm at in the song. I'm mapping it out. Okay, here we go. It's a lot of like AC/DC and like Ride the Lightning covers, some Black Sabbath covers. And then I would, you know, flip the tape back and then hit play and then record onto the next tape, like playing the bass. And so I learned about stacking, and I learned that the harder you go and the more that you lay down, the more the headroom of the tape just like gets swallowed, and it gets worse sounding every single time. But I recall just loving the way that drums would get like squished and smashed, and that's something that I've kept with me to this day. But yeah, so I would try to have to figure it out, you know, learning keyboards and playing the fiddle and guitar and all that stuff. But I'm primarily a lead guitar player and drummer.
Right. So what was the moment then that you decided that, okay, studio's for me, not being in a band? Was there a moment like that?
Yeah, definitely. I was in the hustle of like being 2 or 3 years after having graduated high school. I was out playing with bands and gigging and teaching music lessons and just all the stuff that you do to kind of try to pay the bills. And in addition to that, I was loving recording and loving making records and figuring it out and just sucking at it. And I still feel like I'm sucking at it, but finally in a room that's like actually allowing me to hear more clearly and not suck as badly. So I've been like back in the training grounds right now. I don't want to skip ahead too far, but it's been really exciting lately. Yeah, then I don't know, the bug hit me. I remember just seeing some like really, really early, like before Mixed with the Masters, but like some really early like CLA stuff where I just kind of learned like, oh, like, man, like you can just be like this rock star level like mixer guy. And you know, my dad was at this time, he was doing that too, but it didn't seem as cool because it was my dad, you know. And now I think it's like, man, this guy's just the best. It's great. But seeing somebody else really cool, like really famous mixing, I was like, oh, that, I guess mixing isn't so lame. And up to that point, I was having my dad mix all my stuff. So I would track things, and I didn't want to sit and do the technical stuff. But then I dug in and realized, like, man, I have been missing out. This is awesome.
Wow. And is that, I believe, a really pivotal point for you was you rented a lake house cabin just after high school and set up a studio there and asked bands to come to you. Was that quite a pivotal experience in terms of, again, pushing you down that studio path?
Yeah. And I did the thing that everybody does where I at the time, Gear Sluts was the resource for information for recording. And I went on there and just asked, like, hey, what's the interface? What microphones should I buy? What outboard should I buy? And, you know, I ended up with just all of this stuff that was maybe regrettable, but, no, you know, none of that mattered. I got to have experiences and learn about working with people and learn about collaborating. And that was a lot of like tracking bands, and it ended up being a lot of country bands. So like learning to engineer and like learning how to get that like big Nashville ballad snare that it's like really particular. They're really like intense about that. So I became like obsessed with that. And and then rock groups, learning how to get the rock snare and learning how to get the bottom end right. And like, it's like, which I don't think I ever did. I still haven't, definitely not on the rock records, but yeah, I realized like, man, this has to be the goal. So I need to begin to like try to phase out of gigging and just be like the studio guy. And I don't think that's going to happen in Minneapolis. So I knew that it had to be LA or Nashville. I almost went to Nashville, and glad I didn't. Still feel like I might end up there someday, but went to LA.
That trip to LA sounds really interesting because, I mean, you kind of had to get to a point where you had to get ingenious in terms of your method of getting away into studios. And I believe donuts were one of the ways that. So talk me through that. So you come to LA, you approach all the studios, and you don't get any bites, you don't get any nibbles. So your next move is to do what?
Just to get wacky, just to do what I do, which is I'm a very, very hyperactive, unmedicated ADHD individual. I'm kind of restless and a little bit zany, so I thought, man, I'm gonna lean into that. Let's try that out. Let's get wacky. So I printed these obnoxious resumes, like just pink and blue and just Comic Sans at the top, like just over the top bad. Which, if anybody follows Mixland, which is my current like kind of startup plugin company, we do a lot of that. We don't take ourselves seriously. It's very, very ridiculous in the marketing. So I taped these awful resumes to like 20 boxes of donuts. I have a picture somewhere of my Jeep. I took a picture of the hatchback was open and the Jeep was loaded with boxes of donuts. So I would deliver a box of donuts with the resume attached to the top to most of the studios in the Valley, the ones that would let me in.
Right.
And you kind of had to lie and barter, and when you hit the buzzer, you had to say, hey, I'm here with a delivery for the, I pull out my list of the research I did with the intel of like, this is the studio manager. And
wow.
And I got in, and NRG. Well, I got laughed out of the building all day, and the final studio I went to was NRG, and they let me in. And well, unfortunately, that story just doesn't really. It's kind of anticlimactic because I didn't spend very much time at that studio anyway. But
I don't think that's anticlimactic at all. I think that's the fact that you didn't take no. And I mean, did you get down? I mean, you mentioned you're being laughed out of these studios. How do you take that? How do you deal with that?
You just take it. Like, who cares, man? Like, I don't know. The people I was being laughed at, I mean, I don't want to sound like a butthead, but they were receptionists at a studio. They were just working there too. So like, if that person laughs at me, I'm not going to be too upset about it. I saw on the Genius, the Kanye documentary. I mean, he did a lot of similar stuff, right? He was completely ruthless, relentless, and persistent with just hounding people to absorb his art and hear it and hear him out, and it never shook him,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned Kanye because you again had to use your initiative to actually get time with Kanye. Is that right? You'd been subbed in on a session, and then Kanye ended up turning up. Is that how that sort of
meeting? Yeah, I got a call to go do a sub gig at Nightbird Studios in West Hollywood. It's this great basement studio in the basement of the Sunset Marquis Hotel. Not incredibly pertinent information, but I'm just setting the scene. We're there, baby. The lights are low. I'm there. We're tracking with Tyga. We have a good thing going. We're not even talking, but it's just this great back and forth. We're tracking vocals. It was a really fast moving session, but we had an awesome time. At some point, Ye had walked in, and I'm in the chair. The door's back there. I didn't look. I'm not looking around. I'm focused on the gig. But at some point, I realized he had been there for a few hours watching what we were doing. I thought, oh, that's good. I'm glad this was going well. So I need to leverage the success of this session by, trying to work with him now. Because Tyga has a guy. I'm not going to get hired by him. I'm a sub. I'll never see these people again. That's really it. This would have been the end of the road. So I thought, man, I got to approach Ye. I got to. I'm not going to do it in the room. But so I waited till he left to go to the bathroom. I followed him down the hall. I said, hey, man, we've been here working. I would love to come work for you. I have great respect for what you're doing. If you need more engineers, I'd love to come out and work with you. And there was this moment where he looked at me, kind of mean, and like tilted his head. It was just a moment of silence. And I thought, man, I'm going to get punched. I overstepped it. I'm going to get blacklisted. No studio will ever hire me again. And he said, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, give me your number. And then go talk to my assistant. We'll get you flown out and we'll start. And they flew me to Chicago the next day. We started working. We were tracking and, hanging out, and it was fun. And we went to Uganda, and that was wild. Got to go on a safari and track vocals on the Nile River, and there's hippos and giraffes and alligators around us. It was bananas. It changed my life. Yeah, that was kind of the start. It was kind of a domino that led to a bunch of other connections and getting into the Burna Boy gig, another great African artist that I'm always working with now. And and the Burna Boy thing led to the Doja thing. So it's, they were the recurring theme for any like younger up and coming people like listening is just communication and networking and just being cool and being there, doing the job. It's a domino thing after that, I think.
Yeah, but you've also got to be ready to take opportunities when they come. Approaching Ye, you weren't thinking I'm going to be in Chicago tomorrow working with him, and yet that opportunity presented itself, and there you are. And then you're in Uganda mixing on the Nile. I mean, would you say, were you mixing on the Nile or tracking?
No, I did absolutely zero mixing on any of the Ye stuff. He has a superb team of cats that do that stuff. Would have loved to, obviously. Yeah. But I was just engineering, tracking vocals, and the work that we did there and in Chicago and Uganda is actually the credit that I have for Donda, for that song Hurricane, that's up for several Grammys next weekend.
Observing someone like Ye at work, do you get a chance to step back and just sort of observe, or are you just so in the zone of what you're doing professionally?
No, we had a lot of downtime where we had some tasks and we were always organizing and syncing drives, and we had a team, but there were times where it was just we were kind of sitting there waiting for his call to hit the play button to show some music. He had a lot of meetings going on, so people would come in and we'd play the records for them, or we'd get ready. We were ramping up to start tracking. But at this particular phase of his life, it was a lot of downtime. We weren't incredibly prolific with our output. I think most of the work I did on his team was working with some of the other producers and writers. So to answer your question, I had a ton of time to observe how he interacts and communicates, and how he has the ability to charm and inspire people with his various ideas. And he's all over the place, and I can say with complete honesty, going out there, I had no knowledge of his music, aside from the big singles and the stuff that was out, and a little bit of 808s and Heartbreak, which is my favorite Kanye album, by the way. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't know a lot about him. I come from the rock world, and I just thought it was a great opportunity. And then by the end of it, I feel like now I'm probably the biggest Kanye fan on the planet. I love the man. And people always ask me like, oh, dude, tell me the truth. What was it really like working with him? I tell you, it was incredible. I'm a big, big, big Kanye fan. I think he's a great guy. He's a human being, And we're all human beings. We're all dealing with stuff, but he's a cool one.
Yeah. Did it change in any way moving forward? Has it changed the way that you've operated?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he really inspires me. I see a lot of similarities in our energy. I think that he is on a completely different level of intelligence and output. I think he obviously falls into the category of genius, and I wouldn't put myself there. But like I see the energy, and I have taken that, and I love the way that he will pull from random people in the room, and he taught me that everybody's input is really important and valuable. I hear other mixers who will complain like, oh, the A&R or the manager on that project is like wrecking the project with their notes. We'll get feedback like, hey, this vocal feels wrong, or this vocal feels off, and mixers will get very protective. Like, what does that person know? They don't know anything. They're not even, they're not technical. They don't know what it's not 1,000. It's not 1K. I'm just like, dude, really? But they're the consumer. They are listening the way that I think a lot of people will, and it's incredibly important. We can't misvalue and underappreciate, undervalue
Yeah.
the perspective and input from anybody involved in a collaborative project. That would just be, it would be a terrible and unfortunate missed opportunity, I think, to overlook something just because of somebody's status, or just, that guy's an intern. He must not know very much. It's like, man, that intern might be the future Mike Dean sitting over there, and you never know.
Did you have to learn that? Were there times where you were precious about getting mixed notes as well?
Yeah. It happens all the time. It's tough not to get connected on a sensitive, personal level, because it is so personal. We spend so much time with these songs, and you think like, man, this is, with my pride, like I'll get deep into a mix and think like, this is literally the best sounding mix I've ever done. When this comes out, like this could change the game for me. I'll be able to finally like show this off and be like genuinely proud of my low end. And then the artist will give a note back that's like, low end is way too clean. I want it kind of trashier and wrecked like the reference mix was. And I'll think like, oh, no, this is going to make me sound bad. And then I have to like check myself and say like, what? It's not about you. It's not about your pride and your technical prowess with your clean low end. Like, nobody cares about that, man. They wanted the vibe of trash low end. And I don't mean trash in a bad way. They wanted it to sound like a blown out boombox, which is totally a vibe. And it's like, dude, it's not about me. And I've learned that those records, the imperfect records with the vibe, are like always received the best. I get the most compliments on like some of the stuff that I just don't even understand musically or technically. Like, I don't know how it went out the door that way, but it's how the team wanted it. And they were obviously right. Every single time they're right.
Right.
And those records are the ones that go far and really resonate with the listening groups and the audience. And so I have to remind myself that get out of the way, dude. I have to get out of the way and just be a vessel.
Right. How collaborative is every project? Quite collaborative in terms of you mentioned at the start of our chat that quite often you'll try and talk to people in the team, the producer, the artist, and find out what they are wanting from a mix. Is it always that collaborative that you're I guess talking directly to the artist about what they want?
No, not everything. Like, I've never spoken to Doja, but it's usually through somebody on the team who's there's always somebody on the team who is willing to represent the desires, and who's kind of overseeing, and it's usually a producer or an executive producer, if not the artist. And they'll I whether they are super collaborative or open to my ideas, that's kind of that's changes depending on the project. But I always try to have that phone call, at least the initial call, to feel them out. Like, otherwise, if you go in with the wrong vision, or you think like, oh, they're going for this type of thing, or they're going for that, I can tell by their balances that they're going for more of a trap thing here. And if I go for that, they'll be like, hey, you have to assess ahead of time. Otherwise, it's headache after headache. And
yeah. So how do you, in terms of your listening, what you listen to, do you have to be really up to date with what's in the charts at the moment, what the next trend is going to be? Are you constantly listening to what's happening in music at the moment?
A little bit. I do like 10 or 15 seconds of the first half of songs on like New Music Friday. I listen through mostly just for personal interest. And when something really, hits me the right way, I find out who the artist is and try to reach out to them and try to, as long as somebody that I'm like friends with isn't mixing their stuff, I'll try to get in and mix their stuff. But otherwise, no. I mean, I feel like the records that come in kind of, I'm leaving it to the producers to transcend those trends and send stuff to me, and I kind of learn about what's going on through that.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm not like following the trends and then trying to recreate stuff I'm hearing. I'm like, I don't know. Honestly, I'm trying to like recreate the sonics of records I love in a totally different genre and pull them into this genre.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's at least where I'm at right now.
Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say that's one of the really interesting things about your career is that you come very much from that 90s. You've mentioned the rock stuff that you listen to, the Black Album, the Chains, But then you look at a lot of your biggest credits at the moment are with people like Ye and Doja Cat and Burna Boy,
Mm-hmm.
people who are great in a very different genre to the genre that you came up in. So are all the things that you learn in one genre applicable to another, or you have to adapt what you learn and figure out how they work in another? How does that work?
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of at the tail end of the learning curve of that transition. Like when I first moved out here, I was thrown into working on this style of music, and
Right.
I did it really wrong. Like, oh, here's a kick drum on an R&B track. Let me just EQ that kick drum the way that I've been EQing, rock kick drums. It's just like so many mistakes, man. But yeah, once I kind of smoothed out that transition period, I think that the principles that I got from doing all of that, like traditional engineering work, kind of laid the foundation for like a greater understanding of how to control dynamics and add pulse and feel. And music is music. It's vibrations. It's controlling vibrations and the intonation of things and the way that things are pushing out of the speakers. So I think no matter the genre of music, if you as long as you let the reference mix be the guide, I mean, not to say that anybody could mix Burna, but like I know off, there's 50 other people who could mix Burna, and like I think he would be really happy with the results.
Right.
But I think that coming from that background gives me a sort of a unique edge, and I do think that I make drums hit a certain way with a little bit of punch and crunch. That's kind of my unique little secret.
Right.
Yeah.
Jesse, you've been so generous with your time. Just one or two more things before we finish
Yeah,
up.
sure.
To ask you about Mixland, which you touched on very briefly earlier.
Yeah.
Can you a little bit about what Mixland is, what the concept behind it is?
Yeah, absolutely. Mixland is it is my company that makes plugins, and we are also developing just a bunch of stuff for the community, and we also have a Discord community. So we're trying to kind of put together just a group of any individuals, anybody and anyone that wants to come and join and be a part of this kind of wacky experimental DIY community of figuring out what music making is all about. You can come and join, and we have some free plugins. We have a bunch of sample packs for producers and writers that can try out, and we're also the plugins is kind of the main thing we're spearheading right now. So between me and my partner Eddie, we're developing some cool stuff. I guess the rubber band compressor is like the best selling like flagship thing that we have as of yet. And we also have a tilt EQ and then a free tilt EQ plugin that anybody can get for free. And we have some really cool kind of game changing stuff coming this summer. That's yeah. So we're getting into that space.
I think it's really interesting. I've spoken with studio professionals who perhaps were working in the studios in the 70s and early 80s, and they would talk about the fact that you had this community in the one place. You would go down to the next studio and you'd talk to an engineer or a mixer or producer about what they're doing, and then you'd go to another one and talk about what they're doing. Whereas now these days it seems to be a lot more isolated. A lot of people are just working from home. Is a community like this, I guess, designed to bring back that essence of collaboration and talking and learning from other producers and mixers and engineers?
Yeah. I think that collaborative effort is, it's what we all know firsthand. Like that was what was missing the last couple of years, right? So everybody found ways to do it, and this is one of those outlets. I think of this as kind of a modern approach to the gear space thing. Gears, we call it gear space now, if you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
The just we're trying to do it without all the bullying and the elitism, and it's kind of like a come one, come all, come hang out and contribute, and yeah. To be honest, it's hard to answer what this is, and I wondered how to answer this. I don't know what Mixland is yet, but yeah, it's been really fun and really rewarding to see all the feedback and just see people becoming friends. Like through our community, there have been a number of collaborations and people hiring each other to mix and master each other's recordings. They're like, oh, I'll play session guitar on your thing,
Awesome.
And yeah, it's really cool. So if anybody's looking for a community like that, you can check out Mixland, or shoot me a DM, and I'd be happy to share it.
Nice one. Jesse Ray, thank you so much for your time. It's been so great to talk to you. You've got such a busy week coming up. When do you head out to when do you head to Vegas?
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Yeah, going out on Friday, and then staying through the weekend, and then coming back Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully with a little award. A little
Yeah,
Grammy.
hopefully several, but if there's zero, it's okay too. I'm gonna bring an old, like, a film camera. I'm gonna leave my phone kind of put away in my pocket. I'm gonna bring a film camera, and just with like a 24 shot roll of film, and just capture the best moments with great people, and come back, and I'm looking forward to developing those, and looking and just reflecting on the time. So it's about the time. It's about the moments, and the sharing it with good humans. It's not about the awards, really, although I do love the awards.
Jesse Ray, thanks so much for your time. I'm sure you've got more mixes to do this afternoon and this evening. So from all of us at Jaxsta, and for everyone who's watching, thank you very much for your time and sharing your wisdom and your experiences. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jaxsta, ultimate crediting platform. Like, it's allowing us to be known and to get hired. It is a part of our livelihood. So thank you. Invaluable.
Thank you for your support, Jesse Ray. All right, mate. Have a great afternoon, and luck this weekend.
Thank you, man. See you later, Rod.
Bye-bye.